Do you ever feel disconnected in your movement, kind of like your upper and lower body just aren't talking to each other? Well, in this video, we're gonna build some real functional core strength using a step-by-step approach. So whether you're trying to build some crazy rotational power for your sport, or you're trying to define the six-pack and obliques, this is definitely gonna help you out. All right, let's get to it. Hey guys, Neil Toussaint with TrickStrong.com, where we help you perform without limitations. In this video, we're gonna be talking about core strength in a different way than you might be used to. So instead of just isolating the abs and working on our six-pack, which absolutely has its place, today we're gonna be talking about building the maximal rotational power so you can have ease with everyday movements as well as athletic movements. And so people think about the core as just this midsection, as I just said, but it involves a lot more than that, especially when you're trying to produce a lot of force. So that's going to primarily involve our shoulders, our shoulder girdle, our spine, and our hips. So a lot of rotational power gets generated from these joints and from this section. Of course, your feet, your hands, the extremities are going to be involved in that, but primarily we're being driven through here. In our rotational athlete program and the TrickStrong RX app, we really discuss this concept of anatomical slings, of using and coordinating different parts of our body to work together to produce more force than each muscle could individually produce. So for example, when you go to throw a ball, you're trying to get it as far as possible. You're not gonna throw it like this, right? Like just very linearly. However, that's how we train in the gym, right? So we're just doing a lot of linear motions, machines, etc. So in this video, we're really gonna be just showing you guys how to actually exponentially increase your force production and coordination and efficiency in movement to not only produce more force, but to transfer and absorb force more effectively, which is going to help with injury prevention as well as performance. So let's talk a little bit more about these anatomical slings. So when you go to throw a ball, instead of doing that motion, right, we're going to really, you're gonna get your leg up, you're gonna plant your foot, you're gonna get this arm really far behind you and throw it, right? So if you know anything about physics, you know that distance is going to equal torque. So when we get the more distance we can cover, the more mobility we can use, the more potential energy there is, because we're stretching that rubber band and then we're gonna snap it back. So we're gonna discuss and use some of the exercises in this video to stress coordination of those slings so that they can translate into your athletic and everyday movements. So with the first example that we just talked about, throwing a ball, that's going to really be stressing your anterior oblique sling. So that's the relationship between your pecs, your obliques, and your opposite side adductor. So this whole line is going to be really coming across and getting that closing pattern, and that is a very common pattern that we see not only in throwing but in many other activities. Next thing I want to go over is the posterior oblique sling, which is the glute and the opposite side lat. And when do we see that? With sprinting, single leg jumping. A lot of trickers are going to be using this primarily because it ends up being our swing through. So this lat and the opposite side glute are really being engaged. So we get that cross pattern across our back that, again, gets us that transfer of force, that stability, and the power as well. And then lastly, we're gonna be really addressing the lateral sling, which is gonna be the glute med, so the side of your hip, and then the opposite side QL. So you can see if you're doing a single leg movement, it's important to keep the trunk level so that we can transfer that force effectively. So in this video, we're really gonna be using these three slings in 3 exercises to really highlight the importance of them. We're gonna give you progressions and ways to implement that into your training beyond just these exercises. All right, let's hop in. What we need to understand here is that mobility equals power. So as we discussed, that mobility is gonna exponentially increase our force production potential. It's also going to help us avoid compensations that could cause injury or leak energy and make our movement inefficient. So as an example, when we throw that ball, we try to throw it as far as we can. If we don't have the appropriate motion in the shoulder, that force might go into the spine or into the elbow. Very common areas to now excessively move and cause pain or inefficient movement. Another example that you guys might be more familiar with or relate to a lot more is our knee injuries, right? So when our hips or ankles aren't moving enough, then that force might go into our knee, and we might excessively move through the knee, leading to traumatic or overuse injuries. So in order to prevent that and in order to get the most out of our training, I advise you guys to warm up with these 4 mobility drills. So the first one we're gonna go over are prone angels, and as you can see, that's gonna really help us move through the entire shoulder girdle. So this one drill can really help us with the shoulder mobility part of this. The second one we're gonna go over are the cat camels, and that's going to help open up the spine in both directions. Third one we can go over are the hip 90-90s, and we're gonna do this dynamically, and that's really gonna help warm up our hips, get the stability and mobility requirements so that we can get the most out of these drills. And then the last one we wanna go over are the lunge thoracic rotations, which help open up the hip from the front, but it's also going to help get us more mobility through the thoracic spine. So try these 4 out before we get into these 3 core exercises. We're gonna really work on our rotational power right now. One of my favorite drills that we're gonna go over first is the kettlebell windmill. So actually you can use a dumbbell and you can even use body weight, and I advise you to start with that to get the form and the intention of this movement first. So the kettlebell windmill is a hip hinge, so it's more similar to a deadlift. We're moving mainly through the hips, but it's gonna be rotational. So don't be surprised if your hamstrings are super sore actually the next day, because the first time I started using this drill, I was very confused because the next day I was super sore in my hamstrings and I was like, I didn't do any Nordics, like what's going on? And it's this drill. So we can do it without the kettlebell first. So you're going to take your arm. So let's start on our right side. Our right arm's overhead. Our left foot is in front of us, facing forward. I'm gonna move this kettlebell out of our way. So our front foot is facing forward. Our back foot is facing at like a 45-degree angle. And from this position, you'll see that we have some space between our hips as well. So we're gonna be at least shoulder width apart, and we're gonna be at that 45-degree angle with that back foot. Right arm is overhead. If you've done yoga, it's very similar to like the triangle pose. So you're just going to reach this bottom hand in between your legs as you spiral and look up at your top hand. As you come back up, so you're shooting those hips back, and that's where that hamstring loading comes from. And then when you come back up, you're gonna spiral to face the front again. So with doing this with a kettlebell, it becomes a lot more difficult and it involves a lot more core activity. So this is about 25 pounds. I would advise to start with like anywhere between 10 and 20, 25 pounds. And you're gonna overhead press that. So first get into your position. You're gonna press that overhead. You're gonna look at the bell and you're gonna do the same thing. And you're gonna feel really nice stretch as well as stress to the core. And the heavier this bell gets, the crazier this exercise gets. So try it out. Once you got the form down, try it out with some heavier weight and you'll really see the value of this exercise. It's going to light up your core like no other, your hamstrings, and it's gonna get that mobility and stability as well. So this is an excellent one, try it out. And I would do about 3 sets of 5 to 8 reps. So because our reps are lower, I would rather use a higher weight that you can manage that, minding good form. So you don't wanna do this where you're wobbling or you're unable to maintain that form. You wanna be solid in it, and it should be very difficult for you. The front knee can have a soft bend if needed, but really we're trying to get a nice stretch to those hamstrings. If it's too much, obviously give it as much of a bend as you need. And then over time, this is actually gonna really be very beneficial to help with that as well. This next one is called the lunge step through. And what we're gonna do is drop down into a lunge. And notice I'm rotating towards that front leg. And as we come up, we're gonna step through with our opposite leg. So it almost resembles an uppercut, right? So we're not actually gonna punch, and we're gonna be holding weight in just a second, but I want you guys to get the steps right without weight first. So it'll be helpful to see it from the side. So I'm gonna do it on my right side first. I'm gonna step forward with my right My right arm is behind me, my left is in front of me, and I'm kind of pointing my elbow towards the front, my left elbow, and my right elbow is facing towards the back. Now I'm nice and loaded. I should feel very balanced and stable in this front leg. And then now I'm going to use that load, that coil, and I'm going to explode through and step forward with my left leg. Here's where it gets confusing because a lot of times we get tripped up with our steps. So the second step comes in there. So we're always stepping forward with the right leg. So if we start over again, step with the right, step through with the left, step forward with the right, step through with the left. So let's see how this looks with weight. We can start with something like a medicine ball. I really like this actually because we can squeeze it. It gives us like a nice core engagement as well. So you can get really aggressive with it as well to really explode through the core and use your whole body to produce as much force as you can. What I advise, once you get the form really nice and solid with something light, is to go heavy. Do not go light with these exercises. They're not going to do the best they can for you if you're not challenging yourself. So I'm already breathing hard with that 20, but now we have the 50. So you can get a kettlebell. I like the kettlebells too because now all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick it up and the hand in back is gonna hold it kind of like a plate. Now I can actually pull with that other hand as well. So if I'm doing the right side, I can pull with my left arm to pull it up. So I'm gonna go down here and I can help it up with that left arm. See that? For sets and reps, we wanna do similar to the first exercise, about 2 to 3 sets of 5 to 8 reps. And again, we really want to go heavy with this to force the core to have to be working in order for you to do this exercise properly. So once your form is dialed in, you'll actually find that you can lift more weight than you thought you could because you're coordinating these movements. So sometimes I use about 70 pounds or more, and I'm really having to use the core. If I don't use the core, my arms can't do that in that position. So that's the level you want to get to, but of course you're going to take time to get there and really master the basics first before you get to using it as a very high level or high load exercise. The last one we're going over today is the sling row. So we can use a cable column or we can use bands. And I have a handle attached to this band, but you can just as easily just hold the band or loop a towel through it to make a handle yourself. But really this is gonna be very balancy. So it's gonna stress your balance, and it's also gonna stress the posterior oblique sling and the lateral sling because we're gonna be standing on one leg. So we're gonna take our band, we're going to hinge into a sort of single leg deadlift position. You want tension on the band even at this position. And then when you come up, you're gonna row. So you're using, so when it gets really balancy, it honestly helps to use the row, use that stability that we're generating through the slings to help improve your balance. So if you feel like wobbly, try to create more tension in your body. And as you can see, it's very difficult. But this is a very, very good one to improve that single leg stability, especially for swing throughs and tricking and sprinting, any single leg jumping, things of that nature, really gonna help to stabilize those positions through this exercise. So we can see it on the other side here. And if you guys find it too difficult to balance, you can always put that second leg down. So the leg that I'm having in back here, you can actually have it very lightly tapping, and you're still working that posterior oblique sling by primarily having your weight through that front leg glute and your opposite lat. And then as you progress, then you can lift that leg up. So that would be beginner to advanced. First, you really start with both legs very grounded. and then you take weight off, and then eventually you do it as we've been showing. And of course, to progress, you can increase the band tension and things of that nature. You can also change the angles. So I actually like playing with different angles for this exercise. So you can do it from a low position and a high position as well. For sets and reps for the sling row, it's really going to depend on if you're doing it with 2 legs or with 1 leg. So for 2 legs, you can go heavier and you can do a lower rep count of about 5 to 8 reps, similar to the last exercises. But when you advance to the single leg sling row, then you can actually do a higher rep count because you're not going to be able to use as much weight. So with the single leg, you can get up to about 10 to 15 reps to really stress that stability and balance. And that's going to be our approach to building a strong functional core. So we really want to stress that mobility and stability, and we're going to train through rotation to incorporate the anatomical slings so we're getting more coordinated in our movement. And if you have just started this, you might be surprised at how fast this translates into your performance, because if you haven't been training through rotation, it's going to be a big difference in how your body moves and functions. So if you guys like this type of training, definitely check out the Rotational Athlete program on the TrickStrong RX app, as well as Crossbody Core and other core programs that we have on the app, because it's going to really help take you to the next level in your athleticism and injury prevention. So hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon for the next one.